From Kroll, you're listening to Through the Lens, featuring conversations with experts from around the world who offer their unique perspective to bring truth into focus on topics of governance, transparency, fairness, integrity, and ethics.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Linskey. I'm a managing director in Kroll's security risk management practice and an institute fellow at the Kroll Institute. Today, we're joined by Jim Koch, CEO of Boston Beer. I want to welcome Jim onto the podcast, and in true Boston Beer fashion, we thought it would only be appropriate that if we had this conversation, we do it over a Boston Beer beverage. So I'm going to open mine, and Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Opening day, Dan. This is great. Well, I promised you I would do this. I didn't promise you I'd do it stone sober, and I have discovered that I'm actually pretty boring when I'm sober. So this will improve it.
That's all right. One of the things that the Institute is looking to do is to get answers from leaders of organizations like yours, Jim. And what do you think the biggest governance challenge for the year is this year that you're dealing with?
You know, I would have to say it's the unexpectedness of the stuff that, keeps coming at us. This has been a year when, you couldn't have planned for it. The challenges, both, of COVID and the political atmosphere and potential geopolitical threats are all out there. And none of us, a year and a half ago were prepared for any of it. So to me, it's very hard. I mean, I could list some things that I think are probably going to pop up for a lot of boards. The one I worry about is cybersecurity. Again, I'm not in any way a cybersecurity even knowledgeable person. I just sort of know it's a threat, and my sense is at least we aren't ready for it. We do testing, for example, of how many people click on phishing emails that would download malware. And the number is like 15-20%. I mean, so that tells me that all of our emails are probably readily available to a sophisticated hacker. And to the extent, that malware can carry over into some of the more business critical systems, the ERP system or some of the manufacturing systems, I know that's a threat. And I know we are probably, like a lot of other people, vulnerable, though, we spent a lot of time and money putting up walls and hiring cybersecurity people. So we're probably in the top 20% of people it would be difficult to get into. But I think most companies in the U.S. are vulnerable. In our industry, Molson Coors got hacked when it took down their supply chain. I know there are a couple of distributors at private companies, but of our distributors, they've had those kinds of problems, malware, ransomware. So it's out there. If the one thing, at least at Boston Beer Company, I worry most about that is in the category of, you can predict it and you can do something about it. It would be cybersecurity, but there's a whole lot of stuff that is, just the unexpected and unknown challenges. And for those, you can only try to be resilient, try to have good overall procedures of crisis response and crisis management, and pray every night.
We have a pretty robust cyber practice that we help clients with, and we're constantly seeing that, even well-prepared clients who have gotten ready for the challenges and done everything they can to invest in it, systems can be defeated. And it's not about having the perfect system. We find, and we tell clients, you're going to get breached. It's how quickly you can recover from the breach, minimize the damage, and then respond afterwards. So certainly cybersecurity is front and foremost, even in a crazy year like a pandemic, when other challenges were hitting companies. I know your company went through that. One of the things you talked about was the supply chain disruption, the cybersecurity supply chain disruption that occurred in the industry. How did you deal with supply chain disruption as COVID was gripping the world, and trying to get product into your system so you could continue to serve your customers?
Well, we were very fortunate in a couple of ways. One of them is we maybe saw it coming a little earlier, and earlier in this case means maybe 2 weeks earlier than the rest of the world. We shut down travel in February, and we shut down our offices in early March. So a little bit earlier because you could just see what was going to happen. And I guess the lens we were looking at it through was a little different than the rest of the world. It was just, hey, this is an exponential rather than a linear function. And so if somebody dies today, it means there's 500 people out there that are spreading COVID, because that death is a result of what happened 3 weeks ago. So, we thought about the whole phenomenon differently. And then we were also fortunate in that in early March, we had one of our directors, visiting our breweries, and his name is Julio Nemeth, and he is one of the world's best supply chain people. He's the head of the supply chain for Procter and Gamble. Not only a great marketing company, but a great manufacturing company. And Julio has 100 and some plants all over the world underneath him, including almost a dozen of them in China. So in early March, he had been dealing with this problem for several months, and he basically gave us his playbook developed in China to handle keeping plant operations open during COVID, and including one of the really essential things is you got to get masks. So we were able to get hundreds of thousands of masks out of China before they stopped, shipping them. And we also had access to what are the procedures. You've got to take everybody's temperature. You got to knock some holes in the walls because, every place that used to be an entrance and an exit is going to be one-way flow. You've got to triple your number of break rooms because you've got to socially distance people. You've got to start calling ventilation contractors because they're soon to be really, really busy. So things like that we were able to put in at the beginning of the pandemic. We also had a very clear vision of what we wanted and a standard. And that standard was we wanted for our workers to the safest place they were during their day and their week. The safest place was when they were at work. And we couldn't, control or deal with the risks outside of work, but we wanted them to be safer at work than they were anywhere else, including home. And that gave us a very clear vision of the standard. So it meant that we, in some ways, went the extra mile. We locked up a bunch of hotel rooms so that people, if they were worried about infecting their families or had somebody, who was very vulnerable at home, they could, we would house them for a week, a month, several months, until we got a better handle on the infection rate of this thing. We, started sending people home if they were exposed to it. We changed our pay practices so there was no penalty for that. We gave everybody a week off if they needed it to arrange childcare, because for us, the critical thing was keeping those breweries running. If we could keep the breweries running and keep shipping, our beer to our wholesaler network, who was also running and servicing retailers, who themselves were deluged, and our sales went up like 20% when the shutdown happened. As long as we could keep that flowing, the revenue was coming in, and we could keep everybody employed at the company. And because we were, able to succeed at that one crucial point, we could keep all our people. Nobody got sent home without a job. We did have to shut some of our hospitality operations, but the whole other 97% of the revenue base and the people were all protected. So we found the leverage point, and we were able to succeed there.
We work a lot with your team on the ground in some of the breweries, have privilege of talking to people, and I can just tell you, it was resoundingly apparent and a theme that people felt like the company really cared about their health and welfare. How important is that morale and that, you're a major corporation, but you're almost running it like a family business, and the care for your workers. How important was that in your success in getting through these challenges this past year?
It was absolutely crucial. Just absolutely crucial that people felt appreciated. They knew the company was doing the right thing. In return, they stepped up and did the right thing. I mean, you're right. We had hospitality workers, bartenders, servers, and they put their hand up and said, hey, the company needs me to spend the next couple of months 200 miles away working in a brewery, doing a job I wasn't hired for. I don't know how to do. They put their hands up. They moved into hotels, and they filled that gap in the brewery, which allowed, of course, the brewery co-workers who had the most problems, transitioning. I mean, people who had kids that were dumped out of school into their homes without having arranged childcare, and people who might have to stay home with a vulnerable parent. It enabled the most vulnerable of our brewery workers to do what they needed to do to take care of their families. And it's Dan, I think you raised a really interesting point for boards, because one of the things that boards have a hard time evaluating and even getting access to the right information is this really, really important topic of company culture. And that's often not visible to the board, because they hear about it from the management, the senior management, but they don't really have true visibility to it. So then they're going to hear from senior management, we have a great culture, and all our people value us, and we value all our people. And every board's going to hear roughly the same thing. Nobody's going to say we have real problems with our culture. People don't identify with the company, or things like that. That is not going to be visible to a board until you get these really moments of crisis where everybody has to instinctually pull together and step up and do things that maybe they weren't hired to do, maybe they wish they couldn't do or don't want to do. But the value of winning as a team overrides individual concerns, and the company like Boston Beer Company is able to do extraordinary things in a crisis. And so I think it's really important for boards to probe management and even spend time with people in the company multiple layers down. We have dinners once a year between a group of our co-workers multiple levels down from me and the CEO and senior management, and we're not involved. So the directors get unfiltered access to a reasonable sample of our coworkers, and they can assess for themselves, is the culture what I've been told? And I think that's something that boards need to be much more aware of, because your culture determines your actions, especially in a crisis.
Jim, I used to do the same thing at Boston Police when I was the chief. I asked my commanders, how's things going? What's the tempo on the street? What do the men and women think? And I get told everything is perfect. Our cruisers are running, our computers are running, everything is fine. And I would go out on a Thursday night, visit the police station, find one of the officers that his captain had recommended get rewarded for doing a great job. And I would say, hey, I just spoke to the captain. He says you're one of the top performers. By the way, he has a gift certificate. Please take your significant other out. Have a couple drinks on me on Friday night. You're going on Saturday and Sunday days off. Police officers in Boston get weekends off every 6 weeks, so it's a precious thing. And I would give them an extra day off. And unfortunately, for whoever's partner was left, they had to then the next night, Friday night, I would go and ride with them and take the calls. And I'd find out that the police cars weren't all up and running the way that people told me they were. The systems weren't in place exactly the way they told me we were. And it was a great way, if you take it to the corporate world, Jack Welch walking the floor room of finding out what's really going on in the company, not what people are just saying. So
That's brilliant. I love that, Dan. That is something that directors, never have an opportunity to do, but they're in a position to create that opportunity for themselves. They can go to management and say, I'm going to visit this. Well, I do it. I just this week I was at our breweries, and one of the things I do is I get a random group of hourly employees, and in this case, I had 3 different groups, and it's the ground rules are there's nothing undiscussable. How are we doing? What's going on? And it's very kind of stressful for middle and senior management to know that somebody like me as the chairman or you as the chief is getting direct input from their their street level people, and that's really powerful. So you understand.
Absolutely. And one of the challenges we saw in corporations in our country across this year was, obviously issues of social justice, diversity, and inclusion. I know that's something that boards are thinking about, and I'm sure Sam Adams has thought about it. I've seen some of the work that Sam Adams has done in that space. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on DEI and how that comes to, the board's forefront, and how you think companies should deal with that.
Well, it's obviously a very good, overdue, and challenging development for boards. To me, I think it's very helpful to approach it in the right way. That this is not just a burden that we have to bear. It is not just a cause of the year that will go away. It is instead a real opportunity for companies. And I will go back to the founding of Boston Beer Company. When I started, I came out of Boston Consulting Group. It was full of the best and the brightest in many, many ways. And I wanted to have a partner, so I picked someone from there. And it was not one of the MBAs. It was, in fact, a 23-year-old woman who had not gone to college, who was actually my secretary. Her name was Rhonda, and she was kind of the exact opposite of me. I was like this overeducated white guy living in the suburbs, and Rhonda, didn't have a college degree. She was a bartender at night, and she'd been going to bars since she was quite young because she had a fake ID. I won't tell you her actual age because you might have been police commissioner then, and she was not legal. But she was very, very vivacious person, very good people person. She could talk her way into a bar because she had her sister's ID. And so we were quite different. I guess where I'm going is she was a very unusual person in the beer business. The beer business in 1984 was a bunch of, kind of white guys. And there were virtually no women in senior positions. And Rhonda grew to be the head of our sales force. She had 200 and some people working for her. And about half our sales force was women, which was, unheard of. And one of our wholesalers asked me, Jim, nobody else hires women. Why do you hire all these women? And it's like half of your sales force is women. And, I had to give him the response, which was, exactly half our sales force is women. And guess what? When God created resourceful, capable, energetic, talented, intelligent people, she made half of them women. So that's why half our sales force is women. We hire capable, intelligent, energetic, resourceful people, and they're half women. And one can extrapolate that to all the issues of DEI right now, and we approach this as an opportunity because it is an opportunity for us to continue what we've been doing since the company was started and take advantage of under-recognized talent pools. As we bring in people of color, people of diverse sexual orientation, et cetera, we are allowing ourselves to access talent pools that we have not previously accessed. And that will, in fact, make us a better and more capable company. We just have to learn how to do it because they don't come to us through our regular recruiting processes. Our brewery, we're hiring a lot of people in our brewery in Ohio because we're expanding it. And we are, our brewery is in the city in what has traditionally not been a great neighborhood. A history of riots and high crime rates and, all the afflictions of urban poverty. And, but we know there are talented people who come from that environment. They just don't look like, what we know, and we can't recruit them through the normal mechanisms. They're not on LinkedIn. So, their version of LinkedIn might be, we might have to go to the basketball coach at a high school. Who's a hard worker? Who's the one who didn't make the first team? They're sitting on the bench, but they show up for every practice and they give it 100%. We want that person. So you have to think differently about how do you describe what you're looking for and where do you find those people. And the good news is if you can bring them in, and for us, we don't, in most cases, we're not really hiring for experience and skills and education. We're hiring for values and motivation and potential. We can teach people how to sell beer. We can teach people how to brew beer, but we can't teach people to motivate themselves, to be self-aware, to have a mission of service, to have high values and ethical standards. So if we can bring in that raw talent, we can turn them into great people for Boston Beer Company.
Jim, talk about mission of service as the pandemic shut down huge parts of our economy this year. Impacted a lot of restaurants, restaurant workers, bartenders, waiters, waitresses, and devastated the industry as well as lives. People didn't have money to pay their bills that were in the restaurant industry. they had challenges making ends meet. Boston Beer partnered up with several partners. One of them is a buddy of mine, Greg Hill, a great philanthropist in Boston. But Boston Beer partnered up and stood up, and you put your money where your mouth is in that mission of service. You want to talk about kind of the Boston Beer Strong program and what you did to help the restaurant industry this year?
Sure. It was a program we called Restaurant Strong. It came out of my experience starting Boston Beer Company 37 years ago. Because when I started, the whole company was two people. Nobody needed us. We couldn't even get a distributor. We had to sell our beer from bar to bar and then deliver it first out of my station wagon. So I never forgot that people helped me. The bar owners, the bar managers, the servers, they helped me when they didn't need to, when I was nothing. And without that help, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I always promised myself, there's going to be a time when I'm going to be able to pay that back, when I'm going to be able to say thank you. And as horrible as COVID has been, it did give me finally that opportunity to say thank you. So with our mutual friend, Greg Hill, he has an existing foundation. And what is great about that is it's already there and you can start it up like that. So Greg and I talked, we contributed money to it, ultimately a little over $2 million. And we were able to raise, I think, a total of almost $8 million. And we used that money to write $500,000 checks to people who had an urgent, immediate need. I mean, we knew that eventually there was going to be a COVID package and, there would be help from the government, but that was going to take months. There were restaurant workers who, came to work on Saturday and were told, don't come back on Monday. And these were people, they don't have savings, they don't have cushions, they have rent payments that have to be made, they may have kids, they may need, they lost their health care, just like that. So we knew there were going to be people with those kind of urgent, immediate needs that the social safety net was not going to be available for. So it was a really gratifying to me opportunity to help thousands of laid off restaurant workers. And I was, very aware of the need, frankly, because my daughter was working in a restaurant and she got laid off with no notice and, rent payments to make, car payments. And, she had parents who could help her out, but not everybody has that. So for us, it was just a great opportunity, to do the right thing in a moment when it was needed.
Jim, I watched you start out. I was a young detective working in the drug control squad, and our after work we would debrief.
I'm glad I didn't run into you.
After our cases, we would debrief at Doyle's on Washington Street, and I remember watching people come in with this new beer, Sam Adams, and I think Doyle's was one of the first bars to take a chance on you guys. And
yep.
At one point, there was a major, I won't mention the name, but a major U.S. Beer company that wasn't giving good customer service to Doyle's and get thrown out of the bar, much to several police officers' chagrin, because that was their beer of choice. And then Sam Adams came over to start in JP and move to prominence. And I think it goes to who you are and who your company is, that you grew from, a diverse pair of two individuals who grew a company now that we're doing podcasts to try and pick your brain on governance that Fortune 500 companies should be making sure they're thinking about and putting in place. And I want to thank you for sharing the lessons today with our clients and those that listen to the Kroll podcast. I want to thank you as a citizen of Boston for your support back in the day of the Boston Police Department and our victims as we celebrated the 8th anniversary of the marathon. Your support and the company's support through that was crucial, and it continued today. And I've had the ability to work with Sam Adams on a number of opportunities, and your money is where your mouth is, and you lead from the front, and you've got a great organization. And I just want to thank you for allowing us to take up your time today. And I will say that I'm not yet a fan of the beer, but the Truly is a product that I can get behind.
Well, you're young, Dan. Your tastes will evolve and develop as you get to be, 21 or whatever. And I really enjoyed having a beer together because, you and I have grown up together. When Sam Adams started, you were, the lowly beat detective working JP and trying to control the drug trade there. And I was, going from bar to bar, trying to sell my beer. It's been a great ride and a great life, and I'm really happy to have done it with you. Cheers.
Thanks, Jim. Cheers.
From Kroll, this is Through the Lens. Kroll is the world's premier provider for services and digital products related to governance, risk and transparency. Through thought leadership and research, Kroll opens the lens to provide clarity, not just answers, in all areas of business. For more information, visit kroll.com.